Hello, everybody. This is Team Bite-Sized Bandits. I'm Abhishek Shopakar, and here's our target increment demo for our project. Um, so first off, we wanted to kind of go over the reflection of what we achieved during the project, and we wanted to achieve as we had laid out in our project plan in the beginning of the project. So in our category of what we achieved, we were able to get the fundamental functionalities of the Wheel of Jeopardy game in tow. Functionality wise, we have all the players, the player entities, the games, the questions, the scores, the score tracking, along with the leaderboards all working. We were able to get the functionality for adding and editing questions along with their answers. And we also planned out to create categories and tasks for our players to choose what kind of games and questions they wanted to include and be able to sort through the questions based on how the people had tagged them. We also wanted to create a proper visual wheel spin animation that we were able to add to the game, along with a leaderboard at the end of the game that kind of summarized what happened in the game, what went on, the number of freebies, and the total scores for each of the players that were present in the game in the lobby. And for our what we wanted to achieve but didn't really get to achieve it at the end, we were able to get some of the visuals working, our pop-ups, our UIs, animations like I mentioned with these wheels, but we also wanted to include animations for individual sections and transitions for our pass fail, our correct incorrect answers. We also wanted to implement a tournament mode where it would take place over multiple games, and while you might have players win a certain game, if we wanted to keep track of it long term and kind of have a tournament layout that we weren't able to get to. We also wanted to have a chat functionality with the ability to have multimedia attachments and player customization. While we got the chat attachments to work, we weren't able to add the multimedia functionality into the chat history. And finally, we also wanted the leaderboard history to be long term. As I mentioned with the tournaments, we wanted it to be tracked through various games and various lobbies and be associate that with our individual player accounts. But we didn't get that far into the track the gameplay, so we will add that to the later on. Since our last demo, our increment demo, we have added the following functionality and features. So the first main thing we added was the ability for authentication. We are currently using Google's authentication, so the players and authentications are tied to individual Google accounts. We also were able to add certain functionalities for new game creation. Previously, we had the bare bones functionality for being able to create a game and being able to invite, share code, and access the games. But in this version, we were able to add links to templates, and they are properly working. And templates can be either pre-made templates that can be selected, or you can create new templates. We also added a brief descriptions while creating a game that can kind of describe the gist of the game and what kind of topics this game would cover. We also have a sharing functionality through a sharing button that you can quickly share and invite other players to that can just use the sharing link and join the game. We also improved the visuals for the game lobby that now includes live updates on who's in the game, how many players are available, and if the game is currently waiting to start or has started. And finally, we also added better visuals for the wheel, and we added table with that actually shows the point values and shows which questions have been selected, which answers um, are when the pop-up shows up for the answers, it shows what are the answer options, and we can kind of submit. And the other feature we added was the server updates for individual players. So for each player, it will show who the host is and who has the points, who has current role, who has current turns. Previously, we achieved this through toast pop-ups at the bottom left of the screen, but now we kind of took away some of that and added it directly into the game UI. Now, in terms of the actual gameplay itself, as I previously mentioned, we added visual pop-ups for questions. Previously, it was just a simple uh, list that showed up that kind of had the question and the answers, but now we have proper selection for the actual visual show up that when a player is active, they will get the questions and they will get the prompt to answer the questions. Um, we also decreased the pop-ups that show up on the screen. This was mainly meant for us in our previous demo to show that our systems were connected and our front end was connected to our back end. But now we have transformed that for into visuals for the players, and elaborating on that, the visuals also include who your enemies are, which players has their freebies or has used their freebies, and the current live score for the players. And in terms of the UI, once the game has ended, we have added score updates, game informations, and stats for the previous game that was just played. And now we will move on to the demo section of this target increment demo.
We're going to go through the latest updates to the application. So we'll see on the left, I have Brave open, on the right, Chrome. Both of them have completely different sessions. So we've added authentication. In this case, if I go to the regular default route, I get presented back to the login flow, and I'm able to log in with Google single sign-on. In this case, it's cached, so it defaults to my one email address on the left, which has this auto-generated based on Google profile image, which is just B for my first name. And on the right, we can do the same thing. And we'll note that it's also cached a different email address, which is a different shade of gray for a different Gmail address based on my name. We can also log out. So in this case, if I go and open a new tab, it persists the authentication. But if I were to, for example, log out and I refresh here, I'm also logged out. Same thing would happen here in the same browser. So if I go to a new tab, like let's say I go to the templates tab and I log out, I'm completely booted. And if I were to open a new tab, I'm still logged out. In addition to the previous increment, we have also made a couple of updates to template generation. So in this case, we have the same dummy templates as before, but we have a new workflow for creating templates. In this case, you give it a name of some sort, fake name 123 that validates form validation. You can enter in a description. You can enter in arbitrary tags. And then in addition to that, you can create categories and questions. So in this case, you can create a category. A category has a name, and then you can add questions within that category, or you can delete the category. So in this case, I can add a question, which has a prompt, like what is blue? And then you can give it a series of prompts, which when you check will be the correct answer. So what is blue? Blue is blue. It's not red, and it's not gray. And likewise, we can delete categories, and we can delete whole sections as well. All right, so if we start a new game, we'll notice a couple of changes. So we'll call it final demo game. We'll give it a template similar to the last time we did the demo. We'll give it a generic description. In this case, we'll see a couple of things. First, we're waiting for the game to start. We have the name of our game, and then we can also copy the game ID to the clipboard, which in this case, it's as if we were to give this to a friend and they were to plug it in, their authenticated user would join. And in this case, we can actually see both users have officially joined. I've got a different user here, Bailey Mon on the left, which is a different Gmail account. And on the right, Bailey Troyer, which is my Gmail account as well. And then it also shows who is the owner, in this case with the crown. So what we can do is start the game. In this case, as before, we'll see that we have nominated the next user and we have our regular board. All right, in this case, we have additional functionality for player and opponent choice. When the user spins the board and they get a choice, we'll note in this case, it's player's choice, and the person that spinned has the option to pick which category they want. So in this case, if we pick E, we will then be presented with the question. In this case, we can do E1, and we will go to the next user. All right, so we'll create a new game. We'll give it a name, test name 123. We'll give it a template. We'll give it a description. And in this case, we have a couple of new features. We've got a copy to clipboard feature, which allows additional users to join the game for that given ID. If we refresh the page, we'll note that there are now 2 users. The account on the left is Bailey Mon. It's a different Gmail account. It just so happens that I have 2 Gmails with my same relatively looking name. And then on the right, we have my real Gmail, which has my full name on it. And it obviously colors it, and then it gives a crown for the given host. Based on that, we can then start the game. So the host, which is the crown, has the option to start the game, and then both will be presented with the proper board and the spinner. In this case, it says Bailey Mon is spinning, so it has the proper identity, which we mentioned before would be a new feature. Instead of showing just the IDs, we also show the user account information. In this case, we've also added player and opponent choice. So in this case, Bailey Mon will spin, and they will be presented with a player's choice. So they get to choose what question category they get to be asked. So in this case, I'll pick A in this case, and then I will get A worth 400 points. I'll say A1, and then I can submit it. And I get 400 points, and then it goes to the next user. So if we also look at it from the other end, we now have the user Bailey, who is spinning. If I spin the wheel and I get an opponent choice, we'll note the opposite user has the dialogue. So previously, this user had the dialogue because it was their turn to pick their choice, but now it's the other user and they get the dialogue because they are the opposite user. So in this case, I can pick B, and the other screen will then have the option to answer the question. So in this case, we have B worth 400 points. I can say it's B1, and then I will get 400 points, and we will continue the game logic as before. It'll keep ping-ponging back, except in this case, we also have the choice options as well, on top of the other categories we went through previously. So after an ended game, we'll note there were a couple of UI updates based on the final scores for a given game. So if we go to the last game that we were playing, test game 1, 2, 3, we still had the same 2 out of 4 players. If we go to the score, we'll note that we have the freebies, the score, and the UI is slightly different, but the same end functionality. And just to reiterate, the purpose is we have a tab for the active games that are being played, the game name, the players, the status, and the score. If I were to, for example, create a new game, so we'll be like a new one here, we'll give it a random template, we'll give it a description, we'll start it. If we go to the games tab from another user's perspective, we'll note there's one player playing new one here, and the status is waiting, and I have the option to join that game. If I join that game and we refresh on both ends, we see that the additional user has joined that session. And since it's a WebSocket, we can add more and more users, and it'll simply append it on.
Here is a list of ideas for our next steps to take this game above and beyond. We primarily consider visuals. The first idea on the list is animations. We were thinking of having animations during transitions, especially when a player is done answering his questions, moving on to the next player. It's good to have some sort of animations in between. Also, if the player answers the questions either correctly or incorrectly, the system should respond with some sort of animations to keep the game more fun and interactive. The second idea is to have the ability for the users to customize their icons. We are thinking of having the ability to either have the player upload their own customized pictures, or the system can set their icons by default. The last idea is to have the ability to customize the UI of the wheel, meaning that for all the non-question sectors, we can have a different color for each of them. Last but not least, let's talk about the lessons learned. Let's begin with what worked. Members of the Biceps Bandits spread out in 3 different time zones, but the team managed to make it work by communicating proactively through Teams. And for each of the weekly sync-up, the team also recorded the sections, which is very helpful for future references and also for members that are not available to join the sections that day. The team also used GitHub as well as Microsoft Teams to manage all the files for close collaborations. Despite the fact there are so many things that worked, there are areas that the team can certainly improve on. First of all, coding consistency. Consistency is crucial when it comes to code quality. However, each of the team members, they come from different backgrounds, and as a result, their best practice as well as coding habits is different. So coding consistency is a big issue at the very beginning. Second thing to improve on is version control. Because there are multiple team members working on the same projects, as a result, having good version control can ensure the team works smarter and faster, and it reduces any of the manual errors in between. That should conclude our presentation. Thank you.